Talking with Kris Rockwell, post-digital punk, self-defined, right? You're a gaming guy, right?
Yes. I love games.
Love games.
Who doesn't?
What's your favorite game?
Favorite game?
What are you addicted to right now as far as games go?
Diablo 3.
Nice. Everybody's been talking about what's great about that.
Also, the new Magic the Gathering for my iPad. It's very good stuff.
So why do you like those games? What's your favorite thing about those games?
Well, Diablo 3 is rather addictive. You know, you run around and go after the big monsters, as it were. But I think there's a little bit more subtlety to the game itself, which I think is interesting. So trying to figure out the mastery and understand how to build your skill levels, it's an interesting example of a fun interaction-based kind of game system that I really like. And you know, Magic the Gathering is classic card game.
Yep. Build
your decks. Having it on the iPad's a new interaction because you're actually using a surface, and I think it's a really good implementation of how that game can translate into an electronic arena. It's not as fun as the actual card game because you don't really get to build your decks as much, but trying to figure out that balance and that mastery is something that keeps me entertained without having to think too much about my whatever else is happening at that moment.
So how do you think that those type of games, what can we learn from them when we're talking about mobile games in the learning space?
Well, I think when we start talking about gaming in learning space, I mean, games are inherently learning environments. It's noted that most games don't come with manuals because now players actually learn as they play the game. So I think when you take it from that perspective, what we really have is a very interesting learning environment that allows players to repeat their actions over and over again to understand what the best method of accomplishing their goal is going to be. In the mobile space, it's a little bit different. I've talked a lot about, in a talk I talked a lot about Angry Birds as being a great game because Angry Birds itself is a very simple mechanic. It's very engaging, it's very quick. I kind of like the concept, however, of mobile games extending beyond the screen, particularly in areas where you have a lot of smartphone coverage and a lot of smartphone access. We've got a lot of tools, geolocation, notifications, voice, audio, video, a lot of pieces that you can really use, particularly with a persistent data connection, which most mobile devices have, that allow you to build games using the surrounding environment, which I think is the true definition of what immersive learning could be. I think that that's a really interesting opportunity rather than having people staring at screens and just participating in either e-learning or in gaming by just engaging in a solitaire activity when you could actually engage with those around you. So
people are connecting. They're actually part of the game most of the time. What about kind of designing your own experience? I see some games where people are actually involved in the creation of these games. That I think there's a lot of possibility there in in learnings. So as you move through this game, you actually can affect the the results of the game.
Well, I think in most games you can affect the results of the game. I mean that's part of it. I mean that's part of the outcome. Designing your experience and designing your game is actually a very interesting point. A lot of folks, I just came back from the Games for Change conference in New York City, and there was a great talk, a rant, about game design and playing games and games for change and learning. And one of the focal points, and I can't remember the woman's name, it's escaping my head, but she brought up Jane McGonigal and Jane McGonigal's talk, who I've seen speak a number of times, and she talks about how her brain injury really spawned this idea for her of building a game to help herself. And what the speaker was pointing out was that it wasn't the gameplay that really helped Jane, it was actually the game design that really helped her, or being able to design that game. And so I think that idea of building your own experience, it becomes your story, your personal story, which I think can be very effective in terms of getting the user engaged and getting the user to play.
So I think that's great. But they don't have to be complicated, right? They actually, it's better maybe if they're a little more simple.
No, technology is not always the answer. It's a mantra I keep repeating. We've done games that were simple card games, and we've done games that were more complex video games. The card games were fascinating because it's two people, a deck of cards, interacting and talking with a really simple mechanic that makes a lot of sense and really gets people engaged because they don't have to worry about learning how to play the game. So that kind of ease of use and that kind of ease into the system really helps people when they're trying to get into a game, and really helps them engage and think beyond the game mechanics itself. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
It adds that social aspect as well.
Completely adds that social aspect. I think the social aspect of games, and when we think about board games and we think about how games have been played throughout the history of man, throughout the known history, it's usually a big social aspect. And even when you look at games like, for example, World of Warcraft, you've got a huge multiplayer environment, but a lot of what happens in the games goes on outside of the environment, in the communities that are built surrounding the different guilds and things. So that social aspect is a critical piece to the gameplay for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for chatting with us. And
you're welcome.
Great session this morning. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun, and so appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. I'm going to go play Donkey Kong now.
Nice.